this is Warhawk Beyond 2040, and today I wanted to discuss with all of you about why I feel the DCAU remains the greatest shared universe of all time. Now, it's a bit of a stretch for me to say that the DCAU is without a doubt the greatest shared universe of all time. Now, I know some of you are already going to say, well, that's not entirely true. What about the MCU? Yes, the MCU is the greatest shared universe of all time as far as cinematic movies are concerned. But I'm purely talking about from a television point of view. Now, someone over there is going to shout out, what about the Arrowverse? Yeah, the Arrowverse, it is one of the greatest shared universes of all time, but it had its share of issues. If you want to know all about those issues, highly recommend you check out the success and failures of the Arrowverse with myself and Rexter Boss 11, where we pretty much broke down the entire Arrowverse show by show and the Arrowverse itself as a whole. So, highly recommend you guys all check that out. But the reason why I feel the DCAU is the greatest shared universe of all time is because it was one of those things, it just happened by accident. Now, over in Marvel animation during the 90s, they were doing that sort of thing, but they didn't really make it a proper shared universe. I mean, you had the X-Men crossover into Spider-Man show, and you've had Iron Man and the Hulk crossover into each other's shows, and Iron Man, of course, has appeared in Spider-Man show. You've had all those sorts of things going on, but they didn't really make it a real shared universe as such. But they did address certain events that happened in various episodes. Most of the Marvel characters mainly appeared in Spider-Man show, you know, so in that sense, there was a universe there already, but I wouldn't say it was quite a thing like the DCAU. Now, the DCAU started back in 1992 with the release of Batman the Animated Series, which is now fondly referred to as BTAS. And although looking back at it now, there were no seeds planted for a shared universe. It wasn't like, okay, we're going to do Batman the Animated Series, we're going to have a couple of heroes make cameos or do some team up episodes, and then boom, we're going straight into the meat and potatoes. Bruce Timm and his team made a conscious decision to keep Batman the Animated Series as grounded as possible. Yes, you did have monsters like Killer Croc and Man Bat and Clayface, to name a few, but most of the Batman episodes for that show were very grounded in reality somewhat. And of course, we went down the over the top magic stuff with Ra's al Ghul and his daughter Talia. And of course, we had a guest appearance from Zatanna. But for the most part, Batman had no powers. He was just on his own, doing his thing. Robin would be there with him. Batgirl would be there occasionally. But other than that, Batman was predominantly a loner. So there was no real plans of, oh, let's do a shared universe that's going to pay off with the Justice League. There was just no plans for it. None whatsoever. But I would say, and this is also a shout out to one of the best YouTubers out there, Serum Lake. He done an incredible video about Superman and Batman teaming up in a three-part epic episode called World's Finest, which pretty much was the launching pad for the DCAU, and I couldn't agree more because Superman and Batman teaming up to me was the birth of the DCAU. Two of the most iconic heroes in the history of comic books finally coming together and battling evil. Now, Batman and Superman had teamed up loads of times back in the Super Friends shows, but this, for me anyway, this felt different. This wasn't silly or comical or very golden age or silver age where Superman and Batman are teaming up and then they're best friends. It got off to a shaky start, rubbing each other up the wrong way and not getting along. But that relationship quietly helped planted the seeds for what we would come to know as the DCAU. And then after that, you've had like loads of other DC characters appearing in Superman the animated series, The Flash, Green Lantern, or at least one of the Green Lanterns in Kyle Rayner, Doctor Fate, Aquaman, Steel, just to name a few. So I would say that while Batman was the first cartoon to start things off, I would say that Superman the Animated Series, or as some fans refer to as STAS, helped set the table for what we would come to know as the DCAU. And, all due respect to Batman, Batman is a much more darker, mysterious figure who operates in the shadows and works alone. And he's a very brooding character. Whereas with Superman, he's very heroic, very optimistic, and above all else, just a very chilled out guy. And he lends himself more for someone to team up with him because of his personality. Superman is much more of a team player than Batman. Not saying Batman isn't a team player. Batman is a team player for points, but Superman is the ultimate team player. And he's one of those guys where you turn around and he says to you, let's work together. Well, I don't know. I'm a hero, but I'm not like you. Nah, don't be silly. We can do this. You got this. Superman brings out the best in everyone. Of course, that can be for another discussion for another time. And then you had like the new Batman Adventures, or as everyone refers to as TNBA, and that also lent itself for some guest appearances from guys like Etrigan the Demon and the Creeper. And we also had an appearance from Supergirl, who teamed up with Batgirl. So you could clearly see that the DCAU was starting to take shape. And then, although it's in a different order canon wise, the next show you had was Batman Beyond, and we had a Justice League appeared where we had a much older Superman, Barda, Warhawk, Green Lantern, or Cairo, one of the many Green Lanterns, Micron, and Aquagirl. So you had a Justice League, and they appeared in The Call, where they teamed up with Terry McGinnis. So the DCOU was really starting to take shape. And you also had other shows like The Zeta Project, which was a Batman Beyond spin off, where Terry McGinnis made an appearance. And you also had Static Shock, where we saw various DC heroes like Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, to name a few, team up with Virgil Hawkins. So, as I said, you could really start to see that things were shaping up into something. But I would say the Justice League slash Justice League Unlimited, that really brought the DCAU together to become what we would now know as, you know, bringing all of these heroes together to form the ultimate team. And then obviously you had the Cadmus arc where they connected all of the dots, with certain episodes from Superman the Animated Series, certain episodes from Batman the Animated Series, TNBA, and of course there was some nods which were played out in Epilogue, which was essentially supposed to be the series finale for the DCOU, and there were little nods to all of the previous shows. So it's amazing how something that started by accident ended up being, you know, possibly the greatest shared universe of all time. Now, when you look at live action cinematic universes, not so much the MCU, they don't really come into this conversation. You've got two DC shared universes, Arrowverse and the DCEU. Arrowverse, from a television point of view, in live action, did it very well, but what was their biggest success turned out to be their biggest failure. On the other side, this is now talking from the cinematic point of view, you had the DCEU, you had all the tools for something really special, but it turned out to be very clunky and a complete car crash, which is a shame, really, because although the DCEU wasn't perfect, there was some really tremendous stuff, and it's a shame things turned out the way they did because you had a really good cast of actors and actresses who looked the part, played the part really well, but it was just down to poor decisions, bad management, and too much drama and crap going on. And when you look at it as a whole, the DCAU, even though it was just animation, they did the whole shared universe thing as good as anyone I have ever seen. I mean, some of the episodes' dialogues were just as good as live action, if not better. And then you sit there and think to yourself, how is it animation get these characters more than live action? I mean, live action, you've got a huge budget thrown at the table, but they can't get it right. But yet, animation, these guys understand these characters, they know how to execute these characters, and they know how to tell stories on a weekly basis. But yet, with a 2 or 3 hour plus movie, some got it right, most didn't. What happened? And that's why I feel the DCAU remains the greatest shared universe of all time because they understood the source material. In some parts, they put their own spin on things, but ultimately, they paid respect and just did things the right way. They did things that fans wanted to see. They surprised fans. You had that element of surprise, you name it. And still to this day, I feel that DCAU is the best. And if James Gunn was smart, I would use the DCU and follow the DCAU as a blueprint. So if James Gunn is looking to really embrace the comic books and the Silver Age and all of that over the top stuff, I'd look at the DCAU and take some ideas from them and see how they did it and apply it to live action and make it your own, of course. But yeah, I can go back and watch all of those shows of the DCAU and they still hold up well. The DCAU started in 1992 and then finished in 2006. That's a good run, considering that this was never actually planned. To have that run, all those shows, all those episodes, all of that storytelling, is tremendous. It really is. And, like myself, a lot of fans have been clamoring for more DCAU stuff. Obviously, that might be a bit tricky now because, we sadly lost Kevin Conroy a couple of years ago. Still, to me, the greatest and true definitive voice of Batman. So that might be a bit hard to pull off. But, if we don't get any more DCAU content, I'm happy with what we got. Maybe we could see some Thai animated movies, perhaps. We already had one, which was Justice League versus the Fatal Five, which was really good. So who knows, really? Maybe we might see some more. If we don't, I'm okay with what we got. But that doesn't mean I don't want to see more because I do. But we'll see, really. But overall, for my money, the DCAU remains the greatest shared universe of all time. and I will die on the hill for saying that comment because I stand by that comment. It is. And, I don't really see a lot of other animated media trying to do what the DCAU did. Who knows? Maybe someone will come along and do something similar to this, but maybe not in this lifetime. But time will tell, really. But as I said, for my money, the DCAU is and still remains the greatest shared universe of all time. So that's going to be it from me. I am going to wrap this up now. What do you guys think of the DCAU? Do you agree with me? Do you think it's the greatest shared universe of all time? And do you feel that other shared universes have failed? Do you think the DCAU is a success? And do you think that James Gunn could follow the DCAU and use it as a blueprint for the DCU going forward? What's your favorite show from the DCAU? Is it Batman the Animated Series, the new Batman Adventures, Superman the Animated Series, Justice League Unlimited, Static Shock, the Zeta Project, or Batman Beyond? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see all of you next time. So until then, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for listening.